The room was hushed, except for their breathing still uneven, still trembling with the echoes of what they had just shared. Evening folded itself around the house, amber shadows spilling across the floor as though painting the scene in warmth and secrecy. Kevin lay half-curled against Dito's chest, skin to skin where fabric had been cast aside, his cheek pressed to the solid rhythm of the soldier's heartbeat. That steady thrum beneath him was both anchor and music, a sound that made him feel grounded, yet unmoored all at once. Dito's hand moved slowly, deliberately, over Kevin's bare arm. His fingertips traced circles, then long lines, then smaller patterns again, as if mapping him inch by inch. Every touch made Kevin melt further into him, until it felt like there was no space between them at all. Kevin shifted slightly, brushing his lips across Dito's chest in a kiss so soft it was more breath than touch. Dito inhaled sharply at the contact, his free hand sliding lower to rest at the small of Kevin's back. His palm splayed wide there, pressing him closer, his thumb moving in languid strokes that teased the edge of skin. Neither spoke at first. Words would have broken the spell. Finally, Kevin whispered, his voice muffled against warm skin, "I never thought home could feel like this." Dito's hand tightened at his back, his other fingers threading slowly through Kevin's hair before guiding his head back just enough to press a kiss into his hairline. His lips lingered there, unmoving, as though he needed the connection as much as breath. "You are home," Dito murmured against him, his voice low and certain. Kevin lifted his head, their eyes catching in the dim light. What lingered between them in that look was heavier than any vow. Kevin leaned up, brushing his lips along Dito's jaw. One kiss, then another before pausing at the corner of his mouth. Dito turned slightly, catching Kevin fully in a kiss. That was unhurried, yet burning. A kiss that spoke of belonging, of hunger and tenderness woven as one. His hand slid up Kevin's spine, tracing each ridge slowly, memorizing dot. And when Kevin pulled back just enough to whisper, "Don't let go," Dito answered, not only with words but with touch, with arms that wrapped tighter, with lips that pressed again, with a body that promised it would not release him. Not here, not now. The tea steamed between them, but neither cared anymore. Kevin sat on the counter, lips parted from the last kiss, breath unsteady as Dito leaned in again, taking his mouth with a hunger that was still measured, still savoring, as if he meant to taste every shade of Kevin's response. Kevin's hand slid down from Dito's shoulders to his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat through the thin fabric of his shirt. Dito's hands wandered up Kevin's thighs, across his waist, then higher to push aside the shirt that clung too loosely to matter. His palms framed Kevin's ribcage as though committing the shape to memory. Kevin tilted his head back, a soft sigh escaping, and Dito's mouth immediately claimed a new line of skin exposed along his throat. He kissed there slowly, lingering, lips dragging lower, while Kevin tightened his hold on him, pulling him closer still. The kettle clicked off in the background. Neither noticed. Their mouths met again, hungrier this time, and when Kevin shifted forward, Dito caught him effortlessly, lifting him from the counter, Kevin's legs wrapping around his waist without thought. The movement was fluid, inevitable, as though gravity itself had drawn them together. Kevin broke the kiss only long enough to murmur against his ear, "Bedroom." Dito didn't answer with words. His grip only tightened as he carried Kevin down the short hallway, their mouths colliding again and again between steps, the rhythm of their kisses punctuated by the quiet thud of their bodies brushing the walls. By the time they reached the doorway, the last of the sun had dipped, leaving the bedroom washed in amber shadows. Dito lowered Kevin gently onto the bed, but the moment his body met the sheets, Dito followed, pressing them chest to chest. Their breaths mingled, warm and uneven. The world outside the river, the village, even the forgotten tea faded into silence. What filled the room instead was touch. Slow at first, Kevin's fingers tracing the slope of Dito's shoulders, Dito's hand brushing along Kevin's jaw, as if he were fragile. Then deeper, heavier, kisses that lingered until they blurred into one another, hands that explored as though learning familiar terrain anew. They weren't rushing. They were rediscovering every kiss, every brush of skin, every stolen breath, another thread weaving them closer. And when the room grew darker still, what passed between them was not hurried fire, but a steady, consuming flame, one that promised to burn long after the night. The porch was bathed in a soft amber glow from the single lantern hanging above, its light swaying faintly with the night breeze. Beyond the yard, The village flickered alive, small houses lit by oil lamps, the distant hum of crickets weaving. Into the stillness, fireflies drifted lazily over the tall grass, each blinked like a heartbeat, keeping time with the stars above. Kevin curled closer into Dito's side, his head resting comfortably on the soldier's shoulder. The solid weight of Dito's arms circled him, protective but tender, his thumb stroking gently across Kevin's knuckles, as if the motion itself anchored him. Kevin's tea sat forgotten beside the steps. Warmth came not from the cup, but from the steady heat of the man holding him. "You know," Kevin murmured, his voice soft with fatigue but laced with playful caution, "if anyone sees us like this, the whole village will know by morning." Dito chuckled, the low rumble vibrating through Kevin's cheek where it rested against him. He turned his head, brushing a brief kiss into Kevin's temple, lingering there as if he didn't want to move away. "Let them," he whispered against his skin. "I'm not hiding." Kevin tilted his head, searching Dito's face in the wavering lantern light. What he saw there stilled him certainty, unguarded tenderness, and something that went deeper than either of them had ever dared put into words. The ache it stirred was sweet, almost unbearable in its intensity. Without hesitation, Kevin lifted his face and kissed him. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't meant to be consumed and forgotten. It was slow, deliberate, drawn out like a vow. Dito's lips softened instantly against his, meeting the kiss not as a soldier but as a man stripped of every defense. Kevin's hand came up, brushing along Dito's jaw, thumb tracing the faint stubble there before curling behind his neck to draw him closer. Dito responded in kind, sliding his free hand across Kevin's back, guiding him into his chest until Kevin shifted, half turning on the steps to face him fully. Their knees brushed, their breaths tangled, and the lantern light haloed their closeness with a glow that felt like blessing. When Kevin finally pulled back, just enough to rest his forehead against Dito's, his breath trembled out in a quiet laugh. "You make it impossible to think straight." "Good," Dito murmured, his lips grazing Kevin's as he spoke. "I don't want you thinking, I just want you here." Kevin kissed him again, softer, deeper this time, his fingers threading into Dito's hair, tugging lightly until he heard the quietest sound slip from the soldier's throat. Dito tightened his arm around him in response, holding him as though the world could fall away and he would never let go. The night stretched around them, timeless. The tea grew cold, the fireflies moved on, but under the lantern light, they stayed, wrapped in one another, lost in a rhythm of kisses and silences that said far more than words could. When they stepped back inside, the air felt charged thicker somehow, as if the walls had absorbed every unspoken vow they'd shared under the stars. The lanterns glowed low, scattering golden shadows that trembled across the living room floor. Didn't lead Kevin straight to the bedroom. Instead, he paused just inside, one hand still holding Kevin's, the other sliding slowly up his back until it rested at the nape of his neck. They stood that way, bodies brushing, moving gently as though to music only they could hear. Kevin tilted his face into Dito's chest, inhaling the faint mix of sweat, soap, and earth that clung to him. "Don't let go tonight," he whispered. The words soft but weighted. Dito, single quotes reply was steady, unhesitating. "I won't. Not tonight. Not ever." The promise seemed to break something open between them. Kevin lifted his head, and before either could draw another breath, their mouths found each other. The kiss was slow but consuming, a pull that deepened with every second. Dito's hands framed Kevin's face, then slid down across his shoulders, his arms, his waist mapping him with reverent certainty. Kevin answered in kind, fingers roaming over the soldier's broad chest, catching at the hem of his shirt as though reluctant to stop touching. When Dito's lips moved from his mouth to his jaw, then down the curve of his neck, Kevin's knees bent slightly, his body yielding into the embrace. They shifted together, step by step, until Kevin's back pressed against the wall. The plaster was cool, a contrast to Dito's heat pressing into him. Dito kissed him there, again and again, each one deeper, hungrier, until Kevin's breath broke into uneven gasps. Their hands never stilled. Kevin's fingers slipped into Dito's hair, tugging gently. Dito's palms roamed the length of Kevin's spine, one settling at the small of his back to pull him closer still. Their bodies aligned, chest to chest, hip to hip, until it felt impossible to know where one ended and the other began. The lantern light wavered as they moved again, this time toward the bedroom. They stumbled only because they refused to break apart, stealing kisses between steps, mouths brushing, breaths mingling. The bed waited in amber glow, sheets turned to molten gold beneath the fading flame. When Daito lowered Kevin onto it, it wasn't with urgency, but with reverence, like laying something precious down where it could be cherished fully. He hovered above him for a moment, their foreheads pressed, their lips brushing without sealing. Kevin's voice trembled, threaded with need. "Stay with me, always," Ditto breathed, before kissing him once more. What followed was less fire than before, but no less powerful. Their touches slowed, lingering as if to memorize. Their bodies moved with quiet rhythm, not rushed, but bound by something deeper than desire and intimacy that carried weight, a tenderness that burned hotter than flame. And when at last the lanterns dimmed to embers and the silence thickened around them, they held each other close, their breaths evening out, the promise still echoing in the dark. Not tonight, not ever. Morning crept in quietly, painting the room in pale gold. Kevin stirred first, the soft brush of light drawing him from sleep. He blinked slowly, eyes settling on Detto beside him. The soldier lay on his back, chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, one arm draped heavily across Kevin's waist, as if anchoring him there. Kevin shifted slightly, careful not to wake him, and pressed closer until his cheek rested against Ditto's shoulder. He let his fingers wander across the ridges of muscle on his chest, over the faint scar just beneath his collarbone, tracing them with the reverence of a man memorizing a story written in skin. Ditto stirred at the touch, not fully waking, only tightening his hold until Kevin was half blanketed by his body. Kevin smiled at this quiet, unconscious need to keep him near. His hand slid lower, brushing along the soldier's ribs before circling back up, settling against his jaw. The rough stubble prickled his fingertips as he traced along the line of his face, committing every edge, every curve, to memory. Leaning closer, Kevin whispered into the hush, "If this is a dream, I don't ever want to wake." Ditto's lashes fluttered, and his eyes opened just enough to catch him. For a heartbeat, they only stared, the golden light catching between them. Then a smile, sleepy but tender, tugged at his lips. His voice, rough and low, carried the weight of a promise. "Then don't. Just stay."
In shadows, secret sleep, a whisper starts to bloom. My heart